Lately, I've gone through a very serious illness unexpectedly. The incident has strongly reminded me how lucky, with my good karma and barami, I was that I have passed through it and live on to practice more. It also reminds me profoundly about Marananusati, contemplation of death. I would like to ask you to kindly give some insight on how to contemplate or bhavana Marananusati incorporated with awareness, as I sometimes feel that Maranusati has become yet another foreground, followed by awareness. Is this correct, or should it be any other way? Foreground followed by awareness. Well, to be honest, I've never done much Maranusati. I did as an early monk. In my younger days, I would go to Sri Raj Hospital and go to the autopsies. Very nice. And see corpses and watch autopsies. And that was quite powerful. And that was probably very good for the lustful part of my consciousness, because it just tempered lust so very, very strongly. But I've tried like skeletons, and I once in Luangpor, I was at Banbule, I think that's how you pronounce it, which was a very backward monastery branch of Wat Pah Pong. And the abbot there was Luangpor Si, and his father died. And they had the corpse at the edge of the monastery grounds. So I thought, well, I want to see a ghost. They say there's ghosts. So then I went and I meditated next to the corpse, right? And through the night, I fell asleep. So much for that. So I wasn't very successful in that. And that didn't, the thought of death didn't really bother me. It was the thought of giving a Dhamma talk, which brought fear. So it was never something that I really found curious about, because I guess it was just the nature of the body. So my curiosity was more amata Dhamma, the deathless. Because I thought the reason we do Maranusati is not just that we're afraid of death, but that the Buddha taught there is the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unoriginated, the unformed. So he taught. He said there is the undying. And that isn't the same as like Viradhammo living on eternally. That'd be horrible. Luangpor Viradhammo said I should live to be 120. I said, thanks a lot. So the idea of eternally, your knees would have to be pretty good, right? To live eternally. So that idea is really not what like the Luangpor Viradhammo named the monastery Amaravati, the deathless realm. In London at that time, there was a Buddhist center called Sukhavati, happy realm. He said, oh, okay, we'll do Amaravati. So he's always liked that language of the deathless, and I have too. So my considerations around death are what is it is undying, right? And it seems to me, if you answer that question, then death will kind of take care of itself. I think I also have the intuition that we know how to die, because we've probably done it so often. And somehow we know how to get born. We're here. So I reckon we probably, we probably don't know how to do the other. So I'm not a conventional contemplative in this way, but so my interest was, and also I found too much asubha, like I would do the usual looking at bloated corpses kind of practices, and it didn't. I already had a lot of negative kind of cynicism in my mind, and it tended to move my mind in that way, not to peace. Not that it can't be done. So, and then I don't have a mind which visualizes it. I can't visualize anything really. So I like visualizing a skeleton, which like Luangpor Liam talks about, or Luangpor Dan my mind doesn't work that way. And I'd sit in front of the skeleton at Wat Pah Pong, and I'd look at it. And, okay, I'd be more interested in the kind of orthopedic structures of it. So it was never something that was. So I'm not very good at that. But the other was interesting. The other was interesting, and it seems to me that if you're contemplating that, then you're also contemplating death. You're doing the other. So if one were to contemplate the unconditioned, then whenever the death of the body takes place, I would think be a good option, right? That you kind of have a sense of, well, what could that be? Because as the body's dying, as the sense organs are closing down, I mean, the question everyone has is, what happens to awareness? What happens to consciousness? And we don't know. But it seems to me that is the key, because the only thing that isn't born and dying in our everyday life is awareness or consciousness or presence. Some teachers, like in the Advaita tradition, they say presence. That because awareness sometimes implies that I am aware, but you sense the presence itself. That to me seems not to. It doesn't change like my stomach or my age or my visual perceptions or my auditory perceptions. So to me, that's the key to the Amata Dhamma, to the deathless realm. And that's kind of what I try to teach. When I keep emphasizing awareness, that's what I'm sort of trying. I think I'm trying to do is just bring people to the doorway and then trust in that. In fact, I don't think I'm teaching. I think I just share my hobby. I say, this is great stuff. Why don't you give it a go? And then if someone's really good at the hobby, I'll try that too. So I pick up a lot of ideas from different kinds of people. So if with the degeneration of the body, having a stroke or something quite major, it's a shock, no doubt. But if the refuge is an awareness of change, then one can deal with it. One can be with it. If one's never had that reflection, then of course one's whole being is built upon physical competence, which is pretty. It's not a good idea. Physical competence isn't going to last all that long. So then physical incompetence or incontinence is not good images. Or just the inability to use the body and the frustration of getting old and the, like Luangpor Viradhammo, watching him at, what is he, 87 now or something? He's on, and he's got, his eyes are quite bad. He's got macular degeneration. He's got bad balance, but he's got a lovely mind. His body's pretty good too, actually. And he's very jolly, right? He's just very, very jolly and always talking about Dhamma and transcendence and so on. So to me, that is a great inspiration. And I think that is the way to me. I mean, that's why we do Maranusati, so that we shift to more the Amaravati rather than the Sukhavati. Right? Because the body is very limited, and pleasure is very limited. So all our language of non-grasping is that the ayatana or the five khandhas are anicca, dukkha, anatta. We're constantly banging away at that. These are unsatisfactory conditions. So you get this strange kind of seeming paradox that happiness is unsatisfactory, that sukha vedana is dukkha. And if you understand that why that's saying that is that because sukha vedana changes, it's a part of birth and death. So then you say, oh yeah, happiness. I mean, I'll take it. You give me happiness, I won't, thank you very much. But if I can't get it, I realize, well, that's not a refuge. It's dukkha. So sukha is dukkha. It's very confusing in Buddhism. But if you're really contemplating, yeah, happiness is minor. It's not trustworthy, which doesn't mean that you don't, put milk in your coffee. Yeah, it's all dukkha. So you put salt in your coffee, right? I mean, you don't do that. You enjoy your coffee. There's nothing wrong with that. But you realize that milk in your coffee is it's just stuff. It's just stuff. So it's not so serious. Not so serious. But awareness, and you start to contemplate that. And then that's the language of contemplating the unconditioned. So you take that language, the unconditioned, unconditioned, unconditioned. What does that mean? So what all you really notice is, well, it can't be my body, it can't be my thoughts, can't be my emotions, can't be my relationships, blah, 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 blah. Can't be that, can't be that, can't be that. And you're just left with, well, what can it be? You're left with awareness, unconditioned, unborn. Unborn? Not born. Well, what's unborn? Well, then you look, well, my thoughts are born, the body's born, my relationships are same kind of, and you're unborn. What could it be? Awareness. You keep coming back to, well, that's your only possibility. So then you start to kind of trust that. Okay, just awareness. Awareness the way things are. And then you see where that takes you. And I think that the more you trust that, then as I've been sort of talking about the background, foreground, you begin to see, well, there's something really silent going on there. There's something very still and mysterious there. And that's where language can't go. Language is conditioned. Language is structured. Language is a sense of self. So that's why it's very difficult for intellectuals sometimes to give up intellectualizing. Sometimes people who don't have a huge background in Buddhism do much better. I think Luangpor Chah used to say, kind of, someone came with a PhD and said, oh, it's going to be hard work, this one. A PhD in Buddhism. Oh, whereas someone who was just very innocent, didn't know anything, oh, I get it, yeah. So to bring the mind to silent unknowingness, as it were, not a conclusion, to just that trusting openness of the way things are, is not common. I would say we don't do that because we want the security of the known, and that's, I think, what I trying to get across in this kind of work. Now, when I've been with people who I've done some counseling of people who are dying, and hospice, going to hospice. So that's kind of a monk's duty, isn't it? And it's not a duty; it's an honor. And several women have come to me in the last few years, and they all have come. These particular women with terminal cancer, and they've done the chemo, and now it's terminal, so they're doing palliative care. And they'll ask me, okay, so how do I die? Okay, how do I die? Well, the first question I asked them, do you think consciousness is a physical phenomenon? Do you think consciousness is matter? Do you think consciousness ceases at the death of the body? And all of them say no. So then I got something to work with. If they would have said yes, I said, well, enjoy. Do the best you can, what am I going to say? But if they say, and all of them do say, excuse me, that no, they think there's some element of consciousness which is not physical. I say, okay, then work with that. And so your body's going to go through what it goes through. And if you're taking chemo, you get chemo brain, but most now are in palliative care. And I just start stressing awareness. So you'll feel fear. Fear feels this way. You'll feel loneliness for the loss of your contact with your grandkids. I'm just thinking of a say, couple of women, both have grandkids and they love them dearly, and this, there'll be that loss. And just keep going actually to where the dukkha is and say, yeah, dukkha feels this way, feels this way. So then all the time awareness is being encouraged and heightened, rather than trying to distract the person. Oh, it's okay. It's not okay. Because there's no more distraction in palliative care. What's the distraction? You're going to watch Monty Python, probably the only thing you could watch. But so then actually, yeah, this dying feels this way. Pain feels this way, et cetera, et cetera. And I end up, of course, counseling family too, because these are Buddhist families that I know. And then, yeah, they check in the same way. And then they do that. So then through all the difficulties, I haven't seen, I've seen some really peaceful deaths. I haven't seen a death where the person's really kind of freaking out with fear or anything like that. I mean, I've heard it happen. So like also I've seen that when, like, let's say I'll go into someone's room in a hospice and they have a background with us. So they have some familiarity with our chanting. And I'll see them in a sort of semi-comatose state, and they seem to be struggling. So I'll be there maybe with another monk, and we'll just start chanting parittas. And even if they're not Sri Lankan or Thai, all of a sudden they hear that. They hear that and they calm down. It's so common. It's so common. And like I do it every week, right? No, it's happened often. And because a religious tradition, a spiritual tradition reminds you, especially if you've been contemplating the unconditioned, reminds you of that. You only, our insights are there. Even if we get a bit lost in the foreground, the insights are there. So then some reminder, and chanting is very good. So I guess in Thai culture, I know Sri Lanka culture, they just play parittas for anyone's dying. Do you do that in Thai culture? Yeah, kind of like a play it. Anyway, I've seen it be very effective. So the person looks agitated. They don't seem to be conscious, but they are going through something. And we just chant, and lovely. It's lovely to see because they have a background of that. I had one experience where the family were kind of had a Buddhist background, but they'd never really practiced. And the wife of the husband was dying, and the wife just wanted him to stay awake all the time, afraid of losing him. It was horrible. It was really, really horrible. And I go into the hospital, and they've got all the lights on around this poor guy to try to keep him talking. And I said, get out. Turned all the lights off. Leave the guy alone. I don't know if I had the right to do that, but they were afraid of me. So they left. And I just started to chant. And you say, oh, the guy was relieved. So in a family, if there's fear of death, who is that going to help? Right? Please don't go. Thanks. Please live to be 200 years old or beyond me. So the whole culture has to, or the whole social structure has to take on board that contemplation. So if you have a sense that consciousness is not an epiphenomena of the brain, in other words, it's not material matter, then you would, and as we do as Buddhists, then you say, well, what's the best way of transition? What would be the best way of doing that? Well, that would be metta bhavana, reminding the person of their good deeds. In Sri Lanka, they have a tradition of a ping pota. I think I've mentioned this before. Ping is the Sri Lankan corruption of the word punya, and the Thai corruption of the word punya is boon. So ping is boon, and the Pali is punya. Okay, tambun. that boon. But ping in Sinhalese. So a ping pota is a pota is a book. So it's a book of boon. And this was probably in older Sri Lankan culture, but older Sri Lankans have told me that when a child enters kindergarten, they give him a book. And then the child each day writes in one good deed. And beautiful. And then the teacher asks, so Anna, what did you do? Oh, I helped with the dishes. Okay, write that in your book. And so I don't know how diligently people keep their ping pota, but you imagine when you're dying, someone reads out your ping pota. And then you did this, and oh yeah, I did that. And then you did, oh yeah, I did that. And then you did, yeah. Rather than, oh, I did that. Oh, I wish I had done that. So rather than like the archangel looking at you, you did that, you did that. You know, we say, oh, you did that. we have a really sweet way of doing this. So if the mind has that sense of well-being, then we don't know. That's the best you can do. So we talk a lot about kind of an auspicious rebirth in Buddhism. I'm not interested. I'm interested in more than that which is not born, does not die. So that mindset of I will be someone who will be reborn still is atta. It's still a me, an identity with the body, and then some projection into some Tawatingsa heaven or whatever, or living in Arizona, wherever we end up, right? So that's never been interesting to me. Never, you know, when people talk about rebirth, I said, yeah, maybe. But the other is interesting. What is it that was never born and never dies? That to me, that's my curiosity. Yeah, so consider that actually by being aware of your own fears, by being aware of your own physical discomforts, pain, and taking refuge in awareness, you're actually preparing for death. Because that's, you know, when you die, it's not going to be any different, just more intense. It's not like all of a sudden the body's going to be, I mean, it will be different, but it'll be the same experience through the ayatana, through the senses, and the mind will create whatever it creates. So if you're constantly taking refuge in awareness, then the shocks come, I'm sure, but that's what a shock feels like. And that's what you really want to get strong with. And I think this is a Luangpor Cha's suggestion, to die before you die, in that sense. And then it just builds, that confidence in awareness just builds, and you get a sense that is unchanging. It doesn't born, isn't that? You just get that intuition. So, but if you want to look at corpses, go ahead. We decided in England not to go to autopsies because we thought we'd get arrested, or people would think we're ghouls. So we looked weird enough. So we decided not to go. So, which I was grateful for. Go autopsy. Then I am familiar with Anapanasati and stay with present moment. The mind can move very quickly. How does this approach get connected to open awareness approach? Well, the way I was speaking the other day about awareness with, using that preposition, awareness with something. So for instance, this sitting, I was very sleepy, just a bit tired. And so I knew, okay, the mind's kind of doing that. Okay, I'll practice awareness with sleepiness. That's the program. Let's see. So how am I going to practice awareness with don't close your eyes? Yeah, okay. That don't close your eyes. Don't close your eyes. Okay, I get it. And then look at the Buddha. Yeah, look at the Buddha. Okay, so there's the visual image, and there's the dullness. Okay, whoop, there you go. Whoop, there you go. And do that for 45 minutes. And yeah, that's what happened for 45. You know, nothing terribly exciting, but all the time, what's emphasized is awareness with dullness. I'm not trying to conquer dullness because I'm just tired. It's allowed. and so it's not really a problem. But how to actually practice with it rather than let it just create a very interesting posture. Okay, how am I going to? Well, I have enough experience. Don't close your eye. Don't close your eyes. Look at the Buddha. Watch the energy. So it's a long sitting. It's not like if you're really a happy state of mind, but it's the same awareness, right? So awareness with breathing. Anapanasati, the contemplative, is aware of the long breath, is aware of the short breath, is aware of the contracted breath, is aware of the blissful breath. So what's it saying? Awareness with the way things are. So you take the breath and you play around with the breath. Let's do a long breath. Awareness with a long breath. Awareness with a short breath. Awareness with 10 breaths. Awareness at the end of the breath. Awareness with, awareness with, awareness with. And so then once you start to read like some states of absorption or so on, then that can get you kind of really confused. Because you think you have to get this thing, whatever it is, this kind of product that you do through meditation. Okay, but be careful. You might spend your whole life looking for the product. And what happens when you get the product? Well, the product changes because it's produced. Sankata. Sankata means it's constructed, it's produced, it's made. Nibbana is asankata. It's not produced, not constructed, not made. So if your meditation is a construction, like a big Lego set, you take away the effort, the Lego set falls apart. So anapanasati, like with awareness with the breath, you're not constructing anything. You're not trying to build an edifice of bliss. If bliss comes, fine, then it's awareness with bliss. I would prefer bliss to drowsiness, but awareness doesn't, awareness just knows. So my greed or the mind which likes pleasure prefers bliss, but the mind which likes pleasure is not transcendent. The mind which knows pleasure and the not mind which knows pain, that's transcendent pain. So once you get that difference, then it's awareness with the way things are. Walking anapanasati. And then like some meditations, like akasa meditation akasa is space. And one reads about the Tibetans doing this a lot. And you can see if you're on a mountain on the Tibetan plateau and you get this vast skies, that'd be a really cool meditation to do. The skies in Bangkok, you can't find them. There's all these big buildings. So akasa meditation is the most spacious. So you just contemplate boundless space. But some people get spaced out. So then you localize your attention. You localize on something like the breathing or bodily feeling. But the localization, I'm encouraged. I'm not using the word concentration for the specific reason that I want people to contemplate the background. So that's why I use this language: make conscious the way things are, awareness with, localizing. That's the kind of language I like to use. So you localize your attention, like when the body meditation I did the other day. Localize your attention on the mouth, but then just let the feelings in the mouth come into consciousness. So that's a very deliberate language for me because I'm emphasizing the awareness. And if you do that, like right now, if I did that, like I'm not totally aware of my mouth as I'm talking, even though my mouth is talking. I'm kind of aware of other things. But if I just stop, then I notice saliva on my lip, right? It becomes conscious. But I'm not focusing. Where's the saliva? Where's my upper lip? Oh, my teeth. Where? It's not that. It's just allowing to become conscious. So I'm emphasizing the same thing. I'm emphasizing puru, knowing. Well, it's always the same. It's always the same. So then if something difficult happens, like you get shoved into an iron tube called an MRI thing, right? Or you get chemotherapy, or et cetera, et cetera. You've got the basis now for being with that skillfully, but also doing the same practice of transcendence. And as the deterioration of the body takes place, and as the body begins to die, then that's going to be interesting. Right? And what happens? What happens? You get varied reports of what happened, because people don't tend to come back. But you do get reports of what do you call that? That kind of when people die and they can see their own bodies. What do you call that? Anyone? Near-death experience, right? The near-death experience. So you have reports of that, and all the ones I've read, it's all right. It's okay. But you don't know. You don't know. But what you do know is that you know what you're feeling. So if you trust in that, if there is no consciousness after the body dies, no problem. Just boop, black hole. So there's no problem. And if there is consciousness, then awareness must be really what it's about. Can't be about your smell, sense of smell, or your relationships or whatever. And then you're in good shape too, right? And then if there is rebirth according to actions done and so on, well, if you've really done dana and sila and contemplated, no problem. Like sometimes in Buddhism, we really emphasize the last moment of dying, but I think that's overemphasized, because if you've lived a really good life and right in the last moment you get annoyed at the nurse, does that mean you're born in hell? I mean, it doesn't seem fair. Oh God, I got to start again. I got the last piece all wrong. But maybe it's just, the accumulated nature of goodness is really what conditions consciousness. I don't know. But again, my interest, I think I've got the goodness part covered. I live a moral life, and I try to be a good guy and all that. So if that doesn't work, then I don't know what works. But so my interest isn't in that. It's because I think we've got that covered, all of us. Any bank robbers here? If you're doing bank robbing, then you want to stop that. But we're good people. We keep precepts. We're generous. We're responsible people. So I don't think there's anything to worry about there. So then we can kind of free our mind for, keep doing dana and so on and so forth, because it's fun. And definitely don't rob a bank. Keep sila. But then beyond that gives you the foundation. Then unborn, die before you die. These are interesting things. What is your recommendation for me to get awareness when I go back to daily chaotic life after this retreat? Thank you. Well, that's what everyone asks. That's the kind of $1 million question. And I would say, obviously, simplify life as much as possible. Practice sense restraint in the Sangvara. And sense restraint would be careful of what you feed the mind. Because whatever you feed the mind's going to kind of be a part of. So be very careful of the inputs. So I've heard that Thai people like watching horror movies. Is that true? Tukmar? Why? Why would you watch a horror movie? I never understood that. You must have terrible dreams. Anyway, life is horrible enough. Inputs. So if I'm putting a lot of inputs into my mind, and my mind is constantly consuming those memories, then is there a way I could simplify that? So I can't, at some extent, I have no choice. I have business, I have family, and so on and so forth. But the more you can simplify the kind of sense inputs that you have, very good. So that's what monasteries try to do, obviously. But probably most importantly, and I keep coming back to the last few years, I keep finding myself recommending a really strong morning practice. Keep saying that to people. And by strong, I mean not 15 minutes. You know, that's you've just barely recovered from your coffee. I forget where there was a group meeting of someone. I looked at people and said, you know, I know that you think a half-hour meditation a day is cool, but that's pathetic. Because really, if you're going to develop anything of value, half hour a week or a day, are you going to really get much skill in it? You know, whether it's pottery or woodworking or balancing the books, it takes a lot of work to get skill. So that kind of dedication to morning practice is really pays off. Then you have to adjust your lifestyle to one where you get up before the world gets up. Because once you start rolling with the world grabs you. It has its demands and it has its urgencies. So that means early to bed, early to rise. Very boring. So you have to be a boring Buddhist. Sorry, I don't do karaoke or something like that. Oh, once a week I do, let's say. But seriously, if you get up early and get at least a solid hour of practice, a bit of yoga or whatever, then you enter into the day in a contemplative mode. Not only is there that morning practice where you strengthen the puru, but also, you know, all of us are always working on something, you know, some relationship thing or some habit of mind or speech. We're always, I think. And so yet that theme is kind of enhanced when you do a long morning practice. And then that mindfulness really helps you through the day. So I think that's really the best way to contemplate, develop awareness is by being aware, seriously aware every morning. And then that kind of pays off. Also, you like in the business world or family world, you collect a lot of tension and stresses, and meditation quite often is a kind of letting go of that. So the meditation isn't necessarily fun, by no means, but you're not just holding a whole lot of stress. It's being released from your mind, which means you're more mindful. So that's always my I find that's my recommendation. And then do retreats. Remind yourself of Dhamma teachings. So you're always topping up that. Have a Dhamma group, sitting groups, those kinds of things. So just to finish, that idea of awareness with is I find very valuable, rather than concentration on. It's a different kind of language, isn't it? I'm concentrating, like I'm fighting with the kilesa of dullness. And there's a me, and there's this horrible monster called dullness, which is now grasping my mind, as opposed to, oh, okay, dullness is there, awareness with dullness. It's I think a whole different attitude, and so on and so forth. Okay, I'll leave that for your reflection.